Disclaimer. This story is a work of fiction. Names, places, events, and characters are imaginary and created for entertainment purposes. Wind has a way of making promises out on the road. It can promise rain that never comes, or quiet that never lasts, or a town that looks like a dot on a map, but feels like a mouth waiting to close. Cal Hart rode with that wind in his face, the collar of his coat snapped up, the edges of his hat worn thin by sun and bad decisions. The world had been a long ribbon of frost and dust for weeks. Behind him, somewhere far back, were the cities that paid to have problems vanish. Ahead of him was Hollow Pines, a place that did not pay for anything because Hollow Pines did not need money. Hollow Pines needed silence. Mara Vance followed close on a second horse, a steady shadow with steady hands. She carried her rifle across her lap like it was a sleeping child. Mara didn't talk much when she rode. Cal had learned that her quiet wasn't empty. It was watchful. It was a measuring tape for the world. They were bounty hunters, not because the title sounded romantic, but because it fit into ledgers cleanly. A name, a price, a signature. You brought the person back breathing if you could. If you couldn't, you brought proof. Cal had been doing it long enough to know every job was a story somebody wanted ended. This one started with a poster folded in Cal's pocket until the creases went soft. Elias Crow, wanted for armed robbery, assault, and the murder of Deputy Ezra Klein. Reward, $10,000. Deliver to the county jail in Ashford. Cal didn't care for the list of sins. He cared that $10,000 could buy a new life, or at least a less hungry version of the same one. The poster had described Elias as a man in his 30s, dark hair, a scar like a tear at the corner of his mouth. Last seen heading north toward the woods, traveling alone. But he wasn't alone. Not anymore. 3 days back, they had crossed a trader on the road, a wiry man with eyes that kept darting to the trees. The trader saw the poster and spat. "Don't go to Hollow Pines," he'd said. "That place ain't on any honest path." Cal had asked, of course, what a dishonest path looked like. The trader's jaw had tightened. Like the road just did. Like your horse don't want to step. Like the birds stop singing because they're listening. Mara had nudged her horse forward. What about Elias Crow? The trader had hesitated long enough that Cal could taste the lie forming. He went there, the man finally admitted. And if he's smart, he'd beg them to keep him. If he's not, he'll beg you. Don't mistake it for weakness. It's the only truth that slips out of that town. Cal had smiled the kind of smile he used when people tried to sell him fear. Monsters? The trader's eyes went flat. Call it what you want. Hollow Pines calls it a debt. They'd left him behind, but the words had stayed. The birds did quiet as they approached. Even the wind changed, becoming more careful, slipping through the branches like fingers through hair. Hollow Pines appeared at dusk. No welcoming sign, no fences. Just a cluster of buildings, hunched close together as if they were sharing warmth. The pines that gave the town its name rose around it like spears, their needles black against a bruised sky. Smoke curled from a few chimneys, thin and reluctant. Lights glowed behind curtained windows. The place looked lived in, but it did not look alive. Cal and Mara slowed at the edge of town. The road didn't run through Hollow Pines so much as it surrendered to it, turning into packed earth between buildings. A church stood on the far hill, its steeple crooked. A general store sat near the center, paint peeled down to bare wood. There was a well. There were hitching posts. There were no children, no dogs, no drunks wandering out to ask where they'd come from. Cal's horse snorted and tried to back away. "Easy," Cal murmured, patting its neck. His own skin prickled, the way it did before a gunfight. That sense of someone already watching you with a steady bead. A door creaked open. A man stepped out of the general store. He wore a long apron and a face that looked carved out of worry. His hair was gray at the temples. He didn't smile, but he didn't reach for a weapon either. He simply stood there and waited, as if the town had told him they'd come. Cal swung down and tied his horse. Mara did the same without taking her eyes off the windows. The man approached, boots soft on the dirt. "Evening." "Evening," Cal echoed. He kept his posture loose, hands away from his holster. "We're looking for a man, Elias Crow." At the name, the man's throat bobbed. We don't keep records. That's all right, Cal said. We brought our own. He pulled the poster out, unfolded it, and held it up. The lantern light from the store painted Elias's face in orange. The scar by the mouth looked like a secret. The man stared, as though the ink might bite him. You should go. Mara's voice cut in, low and even. That's not an answer. It's the only one I got, the man replied. He glanced past them toward the road they'd come on, as if hoping it would swallow them back up. You bring trouble here. Trouble brings attention. Cal tilted his head. From who? The man's eyes flickered to the church on the hill, then back. From what walks when the sun gives up. Cal gave a short laugh because sometimes laughter was the only way to keep fear from digging in. We didn't ride 3 days for ghost stories. The man's face hardened. Then, you rode 3 days for a coffin. Behind the man, another door opened. Not the store, but a house across the way. A woman stepped out, her arms wrapped around herself. She looked like she hadn't slept in a long time. Her gaze touched Cal, then Mara, then the poster. Her mouth tightened as if she wanted to warn them, but didn't dare. A third figure appeared in the dark at the corner of the saloon. A man so still Cal might have mistaken him for a post until the man shifted his weight. He wore a black coat buttoned up to the throat and a narrow-brimmed hat. His face was pale, not sickly pale, more like bone under moonlight. Visitors, the pale man said, his voice carried without effort. We don't get many. Cal studied him. There was something in the man's eyes, a calm that didn't belong in a town this tense. We're passing through. No, the pale man corrected gently. You're arriving. Mara's hand rested near her rifle. Who are you? The pale man tipped his hat by the barest fraction. Silas Wren. Some call me the preacher's man, some call me the town's keeper. I prefer neighbor. Cal didn't like the way Silas spoke, as though he had already decided what words meant. We're here for Elias Crow. He's wanted in Ashford. Silas turned his head, listening to the name, the way you might listen for thunder. Elias is under our roof. So hand him over, Cal said. Simple, clean, the way jobs were supposed to be. Silas smiled. It wasn't warm. It was patient. That's not how roofs work here. But you're welcome to speak with him. The apron man flinched. The woman across the way stepped back into her house and closed the door softly, like she was trying not to wake something. Cal glanced at Mara. Her expression didn't change, but Cal knew her well enough to see the question. Is this a trap? Every town was a trap in some way. Some just used different bait. We'll speak with him, Cal said. Silas nodded and gestured toward the building at the edge of town, a low, square structure that might have been a jail once, long before laws reached this far. The windows were barred. The door was thick. They followed. The air felt colder the closer they got, not from weather, but from something like memory. Silas produced a key from his coat and unlocked the door. It opened with a sigh. Inside, the smell hit first. Old sweat, damp wood, and something sharp like iron. Lantern light revealed a narrow hallway with cells on either side. Most were empty. In the last one, a man sat with his back against the wall. Elias Crow looked smaller than the poster promised. His hair was a mess, his face unshaven. The scar by his mouth was there, but less dramatic, like someone had tried to erase it and failed. His eyes, though, those were bright with the kind of terror that didn't come from being caught. He stood as soon as he saw them, hands lifting in a gesture that was half surrender, half pleading. Thank God, Elias rasped. His voice was raw, like he'd been screaming and stopped only because there was no point. You have to get me out. Cal blinked. That wasn't the reaction he expected. Elias Crow? Elias nodded hard. Yes. Yes, that's me, I know. I know you're here to take me in. I'll go. I'll go quiet, I swear. Just don't leave me here. Mara leaned in, eyes scanning Elias for weapons, for tricks. Why are you in their jail if they're protecting you? Elias's laugh was broken. Protecting? You don't understand. They put me in here because it's the only place the door holds. Cal glanced back at Silas. The pale man watched like a teacher observing a lesson. What are you talking about? Cal demanded. Elias stepped closer to the bars until his face was inches from them. His eyes darted down the hall as if expecting something to appear. Monsters, Elias whispered. Not stories. Not wolves. Something that wears the woods like skin. They come at night. They smell you. They learn you. Hollow Pines made a bargain. The town feeds them what they want, and in exchange, they don't take everyone. Mara's jaw tightened. What do they want? Elias swallowed. People, but not just bodies. They want regret. They want a person with something inside them that aches. They take that ache and leave what's hollow. Silas spoke softly behind them. We prefer the term collectors. Monsters is such an unfair word. Cal felt a cold line form down his spine. You're insane. Elias slammed his palms against the bars, the sound sharp in the narrow hall. I'm alive. I'm alive because I stayed in this cage. If they let me go, if they throw me out, I'm dead before the first star. Please, please, you two, take me to Ashford. Take me anywhere. Just get me away from this place. Cal took a step back. This wasn't the story the poster promised, but stories changed when you got close enough to smell them. What did you do? Mara asked. Her voice was flat, but her eyes were sharp. Elias's face crumpled. I ran. I ran from Ashford after what I did. I thought I could disappear in the woods. I thought the world was big enough to swallow a man whole. Then I found Hollow Pines. They took me in. They smiled. They fed me. And then the preacher said I owed the town a debt because the town owed the woods. Silas's smile didn't flicker. Everything owes something. Cal looked at Silas. Where's the preacher? Silas nodded up toward the hill. In his house of worship. Preparing for night. Cal heard that word again. Night, not evening. Not dark. Night as if it was a living thing that arrived like a wagon. Let him out, Cal said to Silas. Silas's expression remained gentle. No. Mara shifted her stance. He's wanted by law. Law doesn't reach here, Silas replied. Only hunger does. Elias grabbed the bars so hard his knuckles went white. Don't listen to him. They'll offer you supper and beds, and then they'll ask what you regret. They'll ask what keeps you awake. They'll find a way to make it louder. And then when the sun falls, they'll open the doors and let the collectors sniff the streets. Cal's eyes flicked down the empty cells. Where are the others? Elias's lips trembled. Gone. Silas turned toward the door. You are welcome to rest in town. The collectors are particular. They dislike strangers who wander in the dark. If you intend to leave, I suggest you do it before the bell. What bell? Cal asked. Silas didn't answer. He simply walked out, leaving the door to the hallway open behind him. The key jingled at his belt like a warning. Cal stared at Elias through the bars. The man was shaking so hard, it looked like his bones were trying to climb out of his skin. Mara spoke quietly. He's scared, but fear doesn't make him innocent. Cal nodded. He knew. $10,000 didn't come with clean hands. But something in Elias's eyes felt less like a con, and more like a man who'd seen something that didn't fit inside his skull. Cal leaned in. If we take you, you come willingly. No tricks. No running. Elias nodded frantically. I'll wear shackles and sing hymns if you want. Please. Mara watched Cal, waiting. She trusted Cal's instincts, but she also trusted her own caution more. Cal exhaled slowly. All right. He turned and followed Silas out into the street. The sky had deepened. The last smear of sunset bled behind the trees like a wound. People moved now, quietly, purposefully. Doors latched, shutters closed. A man hauled a cart of firewood inside. A woman pulled a curtain tight and pinned it. Cal stepped into the center of the road and raised his voice. We're leaving with Elias Crow tonight. The movement paused. Faces appeared in cracks of doors, behind windows. The apron man from earlier stood by the store, hands wringing. Silas emerged near the well, hands clasped. Leaving is always an option, Mr. Hart. The road is still there. Mara's eyes narrowed. But you said the collectors dislike wanderers in the dark. Silas nodded. They dislike many things. But dislike isn't the same as refusal. Cal took the poster out again, held it up like a badge. $10,000 says you don't get to keep him. Silas's gaze slid to the paper, then lifted to Cal's face. Money is a thin shield. Cal's hand drifted closer to his holster. So, what is it you want? Silas's smile faded into something more solemn. We want to live, same as you, and to live we must pay what is due. Elias came to us with a heavy heart. He is valuable currency. Elias's words echoed, regret. Mara stepped forward. You feed people to something in the woods. A murmur rippled through the town like a breeze through dead leaves. Silas's eyes softened as if she'd accused him of stealing bread. We offer, the collectors take. It's a partnership older than the nails in your boots. Cal's mind worked fast, counting exits. The road behind them. The horses tied at the hitching post. The jailhouse near the edge. The church on the hill. Too many eyes. Too much quiet. What happens if we take him? Cal asked. Silas glanced toward the trees. Then the collectors will come for what we failed to provide. They don't like an unpaid debt. And you think they'll take the town, Mara said. Silas's voice turned solemn. Not the whole town. Just enough to remind us. They are fair in their cruelty. Cal spat into the dirt. You call that fair? Silas walked closer, boots still silent. You came for a criminal, a killer of deputies, a thief, a man who chose violence, and now you want to paint him as prey. I'm not asking you to admire our bargain. I'm asking you to respect that it has kept our children breathing. Cal's stomach tightened at the word children, because he'd seen no children. Mara saw it too. Her gaze swept the empty street. Where are your children, Silas? For the first time, something flickered behind Silas's calm, a shadow of grief or anger. Inside. Are they? Mara asked. Or are they gone like the others? Silas's voice sharpened. Careful! Cal stepped between them. We don't want trouble. We want Elias. We'll be out before dark, fully settles. Silas lifted a hand, almost apologetic. The bell will ring soon. After that, no one leaves. Not because we lock the doors, because the road itself closes. Hollow Pines is particular. Cal felt his mouth go dry. The road closes. Silas nodded, looking almost regretful. You will see. Mara leaned close to Cal and whispered, This isn't normal. Cal almost laughed. No. Silas's eyes tracked them, the way a hawk tracks rabbits. You can stay, rest, speak with the preacher, or you can attempt to leave and see if your will is stronger than the town's rules. Cal held Silas's gaze. We're taking Elias. Silas sighed, a sound like a lantern running out of oil. Then you will force the town to defend itself. Cal didn't flinch. Then I guess we will force you. Silas stepped back, expression settling. Very well. If you survive the night, you may take him. If not, the collectors will be fed, and the balance will remain. With that, Silas turned and walked away, vanishing into the shadows between buildings. The apron man lingered, eyes wide. He approached Cal hesitantly. Sir, you don't know what you're doing. Cal said, Then tell me. The man's lips moved as if tasting words he hadn't spoken in years. Name's Tom. I run the store. Used to run it. Now I just keep it. The preacher, he says the collectors keep us safe from the world. From raiders, from sickness, from famine. And maybe it's true. We don't see those things. We see the woods. Mara asked, How many have you given them? Tom swallowed. Enough. Cal's voice turned low. And if we leave with Elias? Tom's eyes filled, but no tears fell. Then they'll take what they can. They always do. And they'll start with the ones that think they're innocent. Cal stared at the church on the hill. The steeple looked like a bent finger pointing at the sky. We need to talk to the preacher. Tom's head jerked. No, he'll get in your head. Mara asked, How? Tom's voice dropped to a whisper. He knows things. About you, about everyone. He looks at you and sees what you try to hide. And the collectors, they smell it. Cal met Mara's eyes. He could see her thinking too. Regret, shame, buried things. Cal had plenty. Most people did. That's how life worked. We still need to talk to him, Cal said. Tom stepped back as if Cal had pulled a knife. Then you'll feed him more than he deserves. Cal didn't waste time. He and Mara walked up the hill toward the church. The path was steep, lined with pines that swayed even when there was no wind. Their needles hissed softly like whispers. At the church door, Cal knocked. The sound felt loud in the stillness. After a moment, the door opened. A man stood there wearing a preacher's collar under a heavy coat. His hair was white, but his face was strong, eyes sharp as flint. Behind him, candles flickered in rows, their light making the interior look like a cave full of fireflies. "Welcome," the preacher said. His voice was warm in a way that felt wrong. "I've been expecting you." Cal's hand tightened on the edge of his coat. "We didn't announce ourselves." The preacher smiled. "No need. The woods announce everyone." Mara stepped forward. "Are you Reverend?" The preacher spread his hands. "Reverend Gideon Hale. Come in. The night is coming fast." Cal and Mara entered. The church smelled of wax and old wood and something faintly sweet, like crushed pine needles. The pews were empty. On the altar sat a carved box, its lid etched with symbols Cal didn't recognize. Circles within circles, lines like roots. Gideon closed the door behind them, latching it with care. "Sit, if you like, or stand. Truth doesn't care about furniture." Cal stayed standing. "We're here for Elias Crow." Gideon's eyes softened. Poor Elias. He came to us like a fox, chased by hounds. We gave him shelter. "And then you caged him," Mara said. Gideon nodded. "Shelter sometimes looks like a cage, especially to the sheltered." Cal didn't like the preacher's wordplay. "We intend to leave with him." Gideon walked slowly toward the altar, fingers brushing the carved box. "Do you know what Hollow Pines is?" "A town," Cal said. Gideon laughed softly. "A town is a story people agree to believe. Hollow Pines is an agreement. We are a pocket in the world where certain rules still matter." Mara asked, "Rules with monsters in the woods?" Gideon's eyes gleamed. "Collectors. Yes. They are ancient, older than your laws. They lived in these pines before men learned to build walls. When we came, we did what humans always do. We tried to name what frightened us." Cal took a step closer. "You feed them people." Gideon did not deny it. "We feed them offerings. Would you rather they take indiscriminately? Hunger without ceremony is chaos." Mara's grip tightened on her rifle. "How often?" Gideon looked up at the ceiling as if calculating stars. "When necessary. Sometimes years pass, sometimes weeks. Hunger waxes and wanes. The collectors are drawn to a certain flavor in the soul. They crave the sourness of regret. It nourishes them." Cal's mind flashed to the trader's words. Debt. Gideon continued. "The town survives because we manage the debt. We offer those who carry heavy burdens. Criminals, runaways, the desperate. People the world already turned its back on. We give them sanctuary, and when the collectors call, we give them what is owed." Mara's voice sharpened. "And if you run out of criminals?" Gideon's smile dimmed. "Then the collectors will take interest." Cal felt a chill. "So, your children aren't safe?" Gideon's eyes narrowed slightly. "No one is safe. Safety is another story we agree to believe." Cal set his jaw. "We aren't part of your agreement." Gideon looked at Cal as though seeing past his skin. "Yes, you are." Cal stiffened. The preacher's gaze was too steady, too knowing. It made Cal feel like he'd walked into a room and found his own name carved into the wall. Gideon stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Tell me, Mr. Hart, what do you regret?" Cal's throat tightened. "Nothing that concerns you." Gideon nodded. "Everyone says that. But the collectors are listening even now. They love secrets. Secrets are concentrated regret." Mara stepped between them. "Enough. We're leaving with Elias. Tell Silas to unlock the jail." Gideon sighed, almost sad. "If you take Elias, the collectors will not go hungry. they will simply seek another meal. And a stranger's meal is sweeter. It tastes like surprise. Cal's hand went to his holster. Are you threatening us? Gideon held up both hands. No, I'm explaining the cost. But you are free to choose. Choice is what makes an offering meaningful. Mara's eyes were hard. You think you're righteous? Gideon's smile returned, faint. I think I'm practical. Righteousness doesn't keep children warm. Cal glanced at the carved box. What's that? Gideon's fingers rested on its lid. Our ledger, our covenant, names and debts. Once a name is entered, the collectors can find it anywhere within our bounds. Cal's stomach sank. Elias's name is in there. Gideon nodded. It is. And now, so are yours. Mara's head snapped up. What? Gideon's eyes glinted with candlelight. You stepped into Hollow Pines. You spoke to its keeper. You crossed its threshold. The town knows you now. Cal felt heat rise in his chest. Anger, fear, disbelief. You can't just write our names down. Gideon's smile was serene. I don't need to. The woods already did. A bell rang outside, and it was a low, heavy sound that rolled down the hill like a stone, vibrating in Cal's bones. The candles in the church flickered as if the sound had brushed them. Gideon closed his eyes briefly as if in prayer. Night. Mara moved to the door, yanked it. It didn't budge. Gideon spoke softly. When the bell rings, Hollow Pines locks itself. Doors resist, roads turn back. Not by my hand, by the agreement. Cal tried the door too, shoving harder. The wood groaned but held. Gideon turned and looked at them with something like pity. The collectors are awake. Outside, the wind returned, not as a breeze, but as a breath drawn in. The pines hissed. Cal forced his voice steady. Let us out. Gideon shook his head. You can leave when the sun returns, if you are still here. Or you can become part of the night's offering, which is faster. Mara's voice stayed calm, but her eyes were hot. We're not dying in your church. Gideon opened the carved box. The air inside smelled like damp earth. He ran a finger across pages covered in names written in careful script. Cal saw dates, notes. A few names were scratched out, as if erased violently. Tonight, Gideon murmured, the collectors asked for something new. Not a criminal, not a drifter. They asked for hunters. Cal's blood went cold. Gideon looked up. They said 2 riders came with iron on their hips and ghosts in their hearts. They said one is tired of killing and the other is tired of being careful. They said those are delicious. Mara raised her rifle, aiming at Gideon. Open the door. Gideon did not flinch. Shoot me if you like. The collectors will still come. They don't need me. I'm only a mouthpiece. Cal grabbed Mara's arm, lowering the rifle slightly. We need Elias. If this town is locked, then our only chance is to get him and ride like hell when morning comes. Mara swallowed hard, forcing herself to breathe. She nodded once. Gideon stepped aside. Go then. Collect your bounty. Bring him to the center of town. The collectors will decide what they take. Cal and Mara stared at him. You want us to parade him? Gideon's eyes were calm. I want you to understand. Every choice is an offering. If you keep Elias, someone else pays. If you leave him, he pays. If you fight, you all pay. But the debt will be paid. Cal's jaw clenched until it hurt. He grabbed a candle from a stand, ignoring Gideon's faint smile, and smashed a window with the butt of his revolver. Glass cracked outward. Cold air poured in, carrying that scent of pine and something deeper. Wet soil, rot, animal musk. They climbed out. The town was darker now, as if someone had turned down the sky. Lanterns still burned behind windows, but their glow seemed dimmer, swallowed by shadows that clung to the ground. In the street, Silas stood by the well, arms folded. He watched them with quiet satisfaction. The bell rang. Cal marched toward him. Unlock the jail. Silas's gaze flicked to the church window they'd crawled from. You spoke with Gideon. Mara's rifle stayed pointed low but ready. Unlock it. Silas sighed and produced the key. Very well, but understand, unlocking a cage doesn't open the night. They moved quickly to the jailhouse. Inside, Elias paced like a trapped animal. When he saw them, relief flooded his face. Then fear returned just as fast. when he heard the bell's echo fading. "It's too late," Elias whispered. "It's too late. They're awake." Cal unlocked the cell. Elias stumbled out, almost collapsing into Cal's arms. He was lighter than Cal expected, like hunger had eaten him from the inside. Mara grabbed a length of chain from a hook on the wall and snapped it around Elias's wrists, not to punish him, but to keep control. Elias didn't protest. He welcomed the cold iron like a lifeline. Cal shoved a lantern into Elias's hands. "Hold this. Keep close. No sudden moves." Elias nodded, eyes huge. "We have to get out of town, now." Cal glanced toward the door. The night felt thicker, like oil. "We can't. The road—" "It turns back," Elias finished, voice shaking. "It does. You ride and end up at the well again. I've tried a dozen times." Mara swallowed. "Then we last until morning." A sound came from outside. Not a howl, not a scream. A soft scraping like something dragging itself along wood. Then a second sound, a wet clicking, like teeth tapping. Elias froze. His lantern trembled. Silas's voice drifted in through the open door, calm as ever. "They've arrived." Cal stepped outside with his revolver drawn. Mara followed, rifle up. The street was empty, but the shadows were not. They moved wrong, stretching across the dirt in shapes that didn't match any lantern. From between two buildings, something emerged. At first, Cal thought it was a deer, because of the thin legs and the way it stepped delicately. Then, it raised its head, and Cal saw its face. It had no eyes. Where eyes should have been were smooth patches of pale skin like wax. Its mouth was too wide, split up toward its cheeks. Inside were teeth that looked human, crowded and uneven. It tilted its head, sniffing. Behind it came another, and another. They moved in a loose group, like a herd. Pale bodies, long arms, hands ending in fingers, too many and too long. They wore scraps of cloth, shirts, coats, as if they had taken pieces from those who'd come before. Their skin glistened, damp. When they breathed, it sounded like sucking through mud. Elias made a sound in his throat. One of the creatures snapped its head toward him instantly, mouth opening in a grin. Mara fired. The rifle cracked. The bullet hit the creature's shoulder, spinning it sideways. It didn't fall. It straightened slowly, as if remembering gravity, then turned its face toward Mara and smiled wider. Cal fired 2 shots. One hit its chest, another hit its jaw, tearing flesh. The creature stumbled, but it did not die. It began to laugh, a wet gurgling sound that made Cal's stomach clench. Silas stood at the well, watching. They don't care about pain, only flavor. More of the creature spilled into the street, drawn by the sound and by Elias's trembling scent. Town doors remained shut. No one came out to help. Hollow Pines held its breath. Cal grabbed Elias by the collar. "Move!" They ran toward the stables near the edge of town where their horses were tied. Mara fired as she ran, shots careful and deliberate. The creatures followed, not fast, but relentless, like shadows that didn't need to hurry. At the hitching post, Cal yanked his horse free. The animal reared, eyes rolling. Mara's horse stamped and whinnied. Elias clutched the lantern, shaking so badly the light danced. "Up!" Cal shouted to Elias. Elias stumbled toward Cal's horse. Cal hauled him up, chain clinking. Mara swung into her saddle in one smooth motion. They kicked their horses forward. For a moment, it felt like it might work. The road ahead opened into the trees, dark but real. The horses surged, hooves pounding. Then Cal blinked, and the town was ahead of them again. The well, the church on the hill, the same rutted road. Mara cursed, pulling her horse back hard. "It looped!" Elias sobbed. "I told you!" The creatures were closer now, shuffling into the street like pale worms. One reached out, fingers brushing the air, and Cal felt a cold pressure, as if the touch had landed on his thoughts. Cal clenched his teeth. "We need a place to hold up." Mara's eyes flicked to the general store. Tom's store. Solid walls. Cal nodded. They wheeled their horses toward it, dismounting and shoving the door. It opened. Tom stood inside with a shotgun, eyes wide. He stared at the pale shapes outside and then at Cal and Mara. "I told you," Tom whispered. "Help us or don't," Cal snapped. "But we're not dying in the street." Tom swallowed hard, then motioned them in. They shoved the door closed and slid a heavy bar across it. Mara dragged a shelf against it for good measure. Inside, the store was cramped, packed with sacks of flour, jars, tools. A lantern hung from a beam, throwing warm light that felt too fragile. Elias collapsed onto a crate, rocking. They'll get in. Mara checked the windows. Not if we keep them out. Tom's hands shook on the shotgun. They'll wait. They always wait. And then the preacher will tell us who to open the door for. Cal turned to Tom sharply. You open doors for them? Tom's face twisted. We try not to. But Gideon, he says if we don't, they take more. They punish the whole town. Cal's jaw clenched. So, you sacrifice to avoid punishment. Tom's eyes filled again. What would you do? Cal looked at Elias, at Mara, at the shaking man. He thought of all the times he'd dragged someone back in chains because a poster said so. He thought of the deputy he'd shot years ago in a misunderstanding that became a rumor that became a regret. He thought of the face of a boy he'd once spared and later heard had died anyway. He didn't answer. Outside, the scraping continued, circling the store. Pale shapes moved past the windows, their eyeless faces turning toward the light like moths. One pressed its face against the glass, skin smoothed over the pane. Its mouth opened, teeth clicking. It whispered. Cal couldn't hear the words, but he felt them, like fingers on the inside of his skull. A memory rose uninvited. A riverbank, blood and water, a woman screaming his name. Cal's hand trembled around his revolver. Mara noticed. She stepped closer, voice low. Don't listen. Cal swallowed. They're in my head. They're in everyone's, Tom whispered. They find what hurts, and they pull it like a thread. Elias covered his ears. Don't let them hear you think. Mara took a deep breath, steadying herself. We need a plan, not just waiting. Cal scanned the store, eyes landing on the back door. Is there an exit? Tom nodded slowly. Back leads to the alley, but the alley leads back to the street. Nothing leaves. Mara's eyes flashed. What about the church? The box? The ledger? Tom flinched. The covenant. Cal's mind clicked. If our names are in the covenant, maybe we can take them out. Tom stared. No one touches it. Gideon says it would break the town. Mara said, good. Elias lifted his head, eyes wild. If you break it, the collectors will take everything. They'll take the whole town. They'll take the woods and the sky. You don't know what you're doing. Cal's gaze hardened. I know I'm not dying for some preacher's bargain. Outside, the creature's whispers grew louder, overlapping like a choir of wet tongues. Tom's voice cracked. They're calling for you. The preacher will come. He'll tell us to open the door and give you over. Mara leveled her rifle at Tom for half a second, then lowered it. Are you going to? Tom stared at the barrel, then at Mara's eyes. His shoulders slumped. I don't want to, but I have a wife. I have no children, Cal said quietly, surprising himself. Tom's face twisted. Not anymore. The words hung heavy. Cal took a breath. Then you know what this bargain costs. Tom swallowed, shaking. I know. And I hate you for making me choose again. Cal nodded once. Fair. A knock came at the front door. Slow. Polite. Tom flinched like he'd been struck. A voice drifted through the wood, warm and friendly. Tom, open up. We need to talk. Gideon. Tom backed away from the door, shotgun lifting. Mara mouthed. Don't! Cal stepped forward, voice loud. Preacher, we're coming to you. Silence, then a soft chuckle. No need. You're already where the collectors can taste you. But I admire the courage. Or the stubbornness. Hard to tell the difference. Cal's fingers tightened. We want the covenant. We want our names out. Gideon's voice stayed gentle. And what will you offer in exchange? Debt can't be erased, only transferred. Mara shouted, We'll offer you. Cal shot her a sharp look. Mara continued, voice hard. You and Silas, you built this. You pay for it. A long pause, then Gideon spoke, softer. Blame is another comfort story. I did not create hunger. I simply negotiated with it. Cal's voice dropped. Open the door, preacher. Gideon sighed. Tom, my son, let them go to the church. Bring them the box. We'll talk like civilized souls. Tom looked at Cal, at Mara, at Elias. His hands shook. If I open the door, they'll rush in. Gideon's voice came again, sharper now. Open it, Tom, or I'll tell the collectors about your wife's sleeping thoughts. I'll tell them what she whispers when you snore. Tom gasped, face blanching. No. Cal felt a cold anger bloom. Gideon didn't just lead, he held people by their secrets. Tom's shotgun trembled. He knows everything. Mara whispered, Then we take him out. Cal's eyes flicked to the back of the store. We go through the back. We don't give Tom the choice. Tom looked like he might collapse. The alley. We'll run, Cal said. And if the road loops, we loop too. But we move closer to the church. We take the box. Elias grabbed Cal's sleeve. You can't. They'll tear you apart. Cal met his gaze. Then you should start praying to something other than fear. Elias swallowed, nodding weakly. Mara yanked the back door open. Cold air rushed in, carrying the whispers. The alley was narrow, flanked by wood walls. Shadows pooled like spilled ink. They ran. The creatures moved at the ends of the alley, stepping into view like pale sentries. Mara fired twice, bullets punching holes through wet flesh. The creatures staggered but kept coming, heads cocking as if the pain was interesting. Cal dragged Elias, chain clanking. Tom stayed inside, the door slamming shut behind them like an apology. They burst into the street. The church loomed above, candlelight still glowing through its stained glass. The path up the hill felt longer now, steep and slippery with frost. Behind them, the collectors flowed into the street, drawn by movement. They didn't run, but the town itself seemed to push Cal back, like the air grew thick. Cal's lungs burned. Elias stumbled, nearly falling. Mara grabbed him by the collar and hauled him upright. Keep moving, Mara snapped. Elias sobbed. I'm trying. Halfway up the hill, a shape stepped out from between the pines. Not a collector. Silas Wren stood there, pale face calm, hands at his sides. He looked like he belonged in the shadow, like the dark was his coat. You won't reach the church, Silas said softly. Gideon doesn't like surprises. Cal raised his revolver. Move. Silas tilted his head. If you shoot me, you still won't reach it. And if you don't, I might let you. Mara's rifle rose. Why would you let us? Silas's gaze slid to Elias, then back. Because I'm tired. Cal froze. Tired? Silas's voice stayed calm, but something in it cracked. Do you know what it's like to listen to a town pray every night for someone else to be eaten? Do you know what it does to a soul? Mara narrowed her eyes. You're the keeper. Silas smiled faintly. I was. Now I'm just a man who hasn't slept in years. Cal's grip tightened. If you're tired, help us. Silas looked past them to the town below. If you break the covenant, the collectors will take their payment all at once. They will empty this place. The bargain will end. And that's bad? Mara asked. Silas's face tightened. There are people here who did nothing but be born in the wrong pocket of the world. Cal gestured toward the empty streets. And the children? Silas's eyes flickered with pain. Gone. Long ago, that's why I'm tired. Mara's voice softened, just a fraction. Then why stay? Silas exhaled. Because Gideon says, if we end the bargain, the collectors won't stop here. He says they'll spread. He says they'll follow regret to every town, every city. He says we contain them. Cal stared at Silas. Do you believe him? Silas hesitated, and in that hesitation, Cal saw the truth. Silas didn't know. He was holding the door to hell shut because he'd been told it was the only door. Cal lowered his revolver slightly. Help us take the box. Let us try. Silas studied Cal's face like he was reading a page. What do you regret, Mr. Hart? Cal's throat tightened again. But now, with the collectors whispering behind them, it felt pointless to lie. I regret that I'm good at this. Silas's eyes softened. Then you might survive. Hunters with regret are strong currency. The collectors will want you. Mara snapped, "Enough talk." Silas nodded and stepped aside. "Go. But know this. Gideon will not simply hand you the covenant. He will offer you a trade. He will make you choose who becomes the offering." Cal and Mara pushed past him, dragging Elias. They reached the church door. It was latched, but Cal drove his shoulder into it. The wood groaned. Mara kicked the lock. The door burst inward. Inside, Gideon stood at the altar, hands resting on the carved box. Candles burned around him in a ring. He smiled like a man greeting guests. "Welcome. I wondered when you'd stop running." Cal raised his revolver. "Give us the box." Gideon's eyes flicked to Elias, then to Mara, then settled on Cal. "You brought the criminal. Good. That simplifies the math." Mara's rifle aimed at Gideon's chest. "Open it." Gideon sighed. "You assume you can erase yourself, that you can step into an agreement and then step out clean. That's not how hunger works." Cal stepped closer, voice tight. "Open it." Gideon lifted the lid. The smell of damp earth rose again, stronger now. The pages inside fluttered as if moved by a wind only they could feel. Gideon ran a finger down a page. "Cal Hart, Mara Vance, Elias Crow." Elias whimpered. Gideon looked up. "The collectors are outside. They are patient, but they will not be denied." Mara's voice hardened. "Then we deny them." Gideon smiled faintly. "You can try, but you will still owe. And debt demands payment." Cal's eyes darted to the stained glass windows. Shadows moved outside them, bodies pressed close, listening. Gideon's voice lowered. "Here is my offer. I remove your names and let you go at sunrise. In exchange, you leave Elias, and you leave something else." Mara spat. "No," Gideon continued as if she hadn't spoken. "You leave your partner." Cal's stomach dropped. Mara's eyes widened, then narrowed, fury flashing. "You bastard!" Gideon's gaze stayed on Cal. "One hunter for one hunter. The collectors asked for two. I can give them one, the one with the heavier regrets." Cal felt the room tilt. Mara's voice came sharp, aimed at Cal. "Don't you dare!" Elias sobbed. "Please, no!" Gideon's tone remained gentle. "This is mercy. You leave her, and you walk out alive with money and a story you can tell yourself. You take her, and you all become food." Cal's heart hammered. He looked at Mara, at the steady hands, the watchful eyes, the woman who'd saved his life more times than he could count. He looked at Elias, shaking, guilty, terrified. He looked at Gideon, calm, certain, monstrous in his righteousness. Cal's regret burned hot. He thought of all the times he'd chosen money over mercy, survival over morality. He felt the collectors outside tasting that regret like it was a stew on the fire. Mara spoke low. "Cal, listen. We don't negotiate with him. We break it." Cal nodded once, feeling something inside him click into place. "We break it." Gideon's smile faltered just slightly. "Breaking it breaks the town." Mara stepped forward, rifle steady. "Then the town should have thought about that before it started feeding people." Gideon's eyes sharpened. "You assume you have the right to judge?" Cal's voice grew hard. "I assume I have the right to live." He grabbed the box. The moment his fingers touched the wood, the air changed. The candles flared. The church filled with a sound like thousands of insects buzzing. Cal's head flooded with images, faces, names, screams. The covenant was not ink and paper. It was memory. Gideon lunged, grabbing the box too. "No!" Mara fired. The shot cracked through the church. Gideon staggered back, clutching his shoulder, blood blooming dark on his coat. His eyes went wide with shock. Not pain, but disbelief. Like he'd forgotten that deals did not make him immortal. Cal wrenched the box free. The buzzing intensified. The pages inside began to tear themselves, flipping like frantic wings. Elias screamed, "Stop! Stop!" Cal lifted the box and slammed it onto the stone floor by the altar. Wood cracked. The lid splintered. The smell of earth exploded into the room, thick and wet, like a grave opened. The candles snuffed out all at once. Darkness swallowed them. In that darkness, something breathed. Not Gideon, not Mara, not Elias. The collectors weren't outside anymore. They were inside. They had been waiting for this moment like dogs at a dinner bell. A pale hand touched Cal's cheek, cold and wet. Fingers too many. A whisper slid into his ear, speaking in a voice that sounded like his own. "Show us." Cal's mind flooded again with regret. The riverbank, the blood, the screaming woman, a deputy dying with surprise in his eyes, a boy he'd spared and couldn't save, a life made of choices he told himself were necessary. Cal shook his head, trying to push it away. "No." The whisper laughed softly. It felt like being laughed at by the dark. Mara fired blindly. The muzzle flash lit the church in brief bursts, revealing pale shapes between pews, mouths open in hungry grins. They were closer than they should be, moving like smoke. Elias dropped to his knees, crying, rocking. Gideon crawled toward the broken covenant, hands trembling. His face was contorted. Fear, rage, grief. "You fools," he hissed. "You have doomed everyone." Cal grabbed Mara's arm, pulling her toward the shattered window. "Out!" They stumbled toward the window they'd broken earlier. Outside, the night was thicker, but at least it was open. Elias shouted, "Don't leave me." Mara hesitated. Cal felt the pull of a familiar choice: run, survive, leave someone behind. Regret flared. He turned back. Elias reached for him, eyes desperate. In the flicker of Mara's gunfire, Cal saw something else on Elias's face. Not just fear, but guilt so heavy it bent him. Cal realized in that moment why Elias was valuable currency. He carried a whole storm of regret. Cal grabbed Elias's chain. "Move!" Elias stumbled, nearly dead weight, but Cal dragged him. Gideon screamed behind them as pale hands closed around his ankles. His voice became a wet gurgle. "No!" Cal didn't look back. He couldn't. If he looked, he'd see Gideon's end and taste the same fear. They fell through the broken window, hitting the grass hard. Mara rolled, rifle clutched. Elias landed awkwardly, crying out. Above them, the church bell rang again, but this time it sounded wrong. Not like metal, but like bone cracking. The town below was chaos and silence. Doors flew open. People ran in shadows, but no screams rose. It was as if sound itself had been stolen. Pale shapes flowed through the streets, hands reaching, mouths grinning. Silas Wren stood at the hill's edge, watching with hollow eyes. Cal staggered to his feet, breathing hard. "Silas!" Silas turned, face drained of all pretense. "You broke it!" Cal's voice was raw. "Help us leave." Silas shook his head slowly. "There is no covenant now. The town has no boundary. The road will open, but so will they." Mara grabbed Cal's sleeve. "Horses!" They ran down the hill, weaving through shadows. The collectors moved everywhere now, no longer herded by rules. They moved like hunger unleashed. A pale hand swiped at Mara. She ducked, the fingers grazing her hair, and she shuddered as if ice had touched her thoughts. Mara gasped, eyes flashing. It saw something." Cal fired, bullets useless. "Don't think, don't remember." Easy to say, impossible to do. They reached the hitching post. Their horses were gone. The post stood empty, ropes torn. Cal's stomach dropped. No. A whinny came from the alley behind the store. They sprinted, finding the horses trapped between fences, eyes rolling, trembling. Mara soothed hers with a harsh whisper. Cal yanked the reins, dragging his horse forward. Elias stumbled, still chained. "I can't ride." "You can," Cal snapped. He shoved Elias onto Mara's horse behind her, forcing his arms around her waist. Mara hissed but didn't argue. She needed her rifle hands free. Cal swung into his saddle. They kicked the horses forward toward the edge of town, where the road met the trees. The road was there, but it looked different now. The dirt seemed darker, as if soaked. The pines leaned inward, forming an arch like a throat. Behind them, the collectors followed, faster now, drawn by the breaking of their meal's container. They reached out, fingers brushing air. The whispers grew frantic, hungry, excited. As Cal's horse surged into the trees, the world warped. For a heartbeat, Cal saw the road ahead split into 3 paths, one leading out, one leading back, one leading down into a black hole between roots. A whisper rose from the pines, louder than the others. Choose. Cal's hands trembled on the reins. The horse's ears flattened. Mara shouted, "Left! Left!" Cal had no idea why she chose left, but he trusted her. He yanked the reins left. The horse veered. Trees blurred. The air smelled like wet earth and old tears. Behind them, something screamed, not in anger, but in frustration, like a starving thing denied a bite. The road snapped. Suddenly the trees opened and they were out. Moonlight lay across an open field. Behind them, the pines stood like a wall. Hollow Pines was gone, swallowed by shadow, as if it had never existed. Cal's lungs burned. He didn't stop riding until the first hint of gray crept into the horizon. Only then did they slow, by a shallow creek. The horses drank greedily. Cal slid off his saddle, legs shaking. Mara eased down carefully, helping Elias dismount. Elias collapsed into the grass, sobbing, laughing, both at once. "We're out," Mara whispered, as if afraid saying it would make it untrue. Cal stared at the line of trees behind them. In the early light, it looked like any forest. Birds began to sing, tentative at first, then bolder. But Cal could still smell the damp earth. Elias wiped his face, eyes bloodshot. "You broke it! You broke the covenant!" Mara's voice was cold. "It should have been broken." Elias shook, hugging himself. "You don't understand. The collectors, they don't stay in one place. They follow. They follow regret. And you two, you carry plenty." Cal's throat tightened. He stared at his hands. He saw faint streaks of dark mud on his skin, as if the church's floor had marked him. Mara looked at Cal, then at Elias. "So what now?" Cal took a slow breath. "Now we finish the job." Elias flinched. "What?" Cal pulled the poster out again, crumpled now, smeared with dirt. $10,000. A clean ending to a messy night. Mara's eyes searched Cal's face. "Cal!" Cal's voice was hoarse. "He killed a deputy." Elias stared at him, horror dawning. "After everything..." Cal's jaw clenched. "After everything, you still did what you did. And you knew Hollow Pines was a place people disappeared. You came to hide. And you would have let us be fed if it meant you escaped." Elias's mouth opened, then closed. He had no argument, only fear. Mara stepped closer to Cal, voice low. "We can still bring him in. Alive." Cal nodded slowly. "Alive." He looked at Elias. "We take you to Ashford. You stand trial. You tell them what Hollow Pines is. You tell them the town is gone, but something is out there." Elias laughed bitterly. "They won't believe me." Cal's eyes hardened. "Then they'll learn the hard way. But we won't lie to ourselves. Not anymore." Mara tightened the chain around Elias's wrists. Elias didn't fight. His shoulders sagged, defeated. They mounted up again as the sun rose. As they rode, Cal felt something in the back of his mind, a soft tapping, like teeth clicking. He tried to ignore it. Mara rode beside him, silent. Hours passed. The world looked normal again. Fields, fences, a crow on a post watching them. Then, as they crested a hill, Cal saw a small cluster of pines ahead. Not many, but enough to cast a patch of shadow over the road. His horse slowed, ears flicking. Cal's stomach tightened. From that patch of shadow, a pale figure stepped out, eyeless, smiling. Cal's breath caught. He reached for his gun. The figure lifted a hand, fingers too many, and tilted its head like it was listening. Then it whispered, soft as wind. "We found you." Cal felt Mara tense beside him. Elias began to sob again. The sun was up. The world was wide. But hunger had learned their names. And the road, Cal realized, was just another kind of throat. He kicked his horse forward anyway, because the only thing worse than regret was letting it stop you. And behind them, in the rustle of needles and the hush between birdsong, the collectors followed, patient as debt, faithful as shadow.